Hello, everyone. My name is Tim. Welcome to All Out Coach, my podcast where leaders across different industries share their legacy to inspire people to stretch themselves and lift others. Today, I have an incredible guest. Her name is Briana Carney, and she is the co-founder of a transformational new outsourcing solution called CrewBloom. Thank you, Briana, for making time to share your journey and some of your lessons and your solution. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm just really excited to be invited to share on your podcast and to share a little bit about my experience as a co-founder, in particular with a remote model.
Yeah, and we connected at a LinkedIn meeting, a LinkedIn networking event, where your solution I thought was very timely, particularly as I'm a medical science liaison and have had this remote role in the pharmaceutical industry for about 16 years, and providing new, highly skilled remote employees to a number of different companies, which is somewhat of what your model is, I thought was very relevant. And take us first through your career journey before we get into your company, if you don't mind.
Of course, cheers. So I went to school for business management. After graduating college at the University of Minnesota, I moved to New York, which was quite a big challenge and hurdle. I'm a Midwest girl and have a lot of pride from my Minnesota heritage. I got to work at a small startup before moving to Amazon, and was part of a launch within the Amazon umbrella, which just really helped me to firm my handshake and to really get a pretty dense catalog of connections and experience. After leaving Amazon, I spent a year in Asia, traveling a bit, but also planting some seeds for my next chapter, which was that of launching. And very quickly in Asia, it became very transparent that there was a surplus of capital, and it could be a massive value for companies in the US to scale and grow.
Who have been some of the mentors in your career through some of the transitions that you mentioned?
Yeah, great question. So I would say that my dad is someone that is more than just a dad. He is entrepreneurial in his nature. One of his close friends, John Olson, was monumental in terms of me just really being able to kind of step out and have the courage to build something from scratch. But a number of folks in and around Brooklyn and in New York City as well, people that I worked with at Amazon. The event that we met at Joe Applebaum has been with me from inception. And again, I'm just really, really fortunate and blessed in that way.
What has inspired you about traveling in business?
Yeah, great. I love that question. So I actually didn't live in one area in Asia. I traveled throughout, which was really helpful. Obviously, India is the stronghold of the outsourcing and BPO space. So I've spent a significant amount of time in India, all throughout. Nepal is Southeast Asia as well. And I think that really clearly it becomes really apparent that human beings are phenomenal, right? And that's just a baseline, whether I am from Kenya or Nicaragua or Paris, right? Humans are just the best. And they bring to the table such an expansive, dense offering. And I think that those whom are most, I guess, eager and hungry to grow their organization would be really short-sighted to not dig into what's at our disposal on a global scale. And so, yeah, having the opportunity to experience that firsthand was instrumental in launching my business.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the reason why I asked you that is because I was born in a small antique country, Republic of Georgia, and I've certainly moved over my life quite a lot. And one of the things that I've found is that we have and we share many more similarities than differences. Once you really get a chance to learn the different languages, the cultures as you travel, you realize that we have many more fundamental things that we look for: family, attention, recognition, regardless of our age, our status, or our title. So I really appreciate your comments there on that humane aspect that that you have to consider working anywhere, and be adaptable as well, because I imagine you must have been very adaptable, and you must have learned a lot of different nuances about these different cultures. Even probably from Minnesota to New York, there are a lot of differences, right? Yeah, that's a very interesting journey that you've had. Now, tell me how you see your company being relevant in our times today, because we're living in a time that is probably unprecedented in terms of uncertainty about tomorrow. So with COVID-19, where your company is, what does Crew Bloom bring to those people who want to be successful, want to be productive right now?
Great question. So twofold, right? So Crew Bloom is a marketplace for finding absolute top caliber global talent. And that's a significantly more affordable than onshore domestic resources. And so when we look at, for example, the opportunity of being a work provider and a provider of a steady, stable income, that's really exciting. And the baseline of my business is top caliber talent. And then we look at the impact that could have on growing US based. We service clients in a number of different regions. So having an impact on both of these funnels of my business is key. So not only, right, do we see that the remote model that we adopted from inception, so all of our folks work home-based or remotely. And what that empowered us to do is just have a greater profit margin so we could pay livable wages, right? Because top performing talent, regardless of where I live, right? If I live in St. Louis, Missouri, or again, India or Nicaragua, I don't want to just pay my bills, right? That sucks. I don't want to just work, get up every day, and really set out to thrive and be a top performer and only be able to kind of break even. I want to send my kids to college and go on a vacation. And so what I think is has been a blessing for us in our business and our revenue streams has just been having that remote model. So we've partnered with Time Doctor, which is remote workforce tracking software. And that gives us visibility into everyone's workflow. Our recruitment process is really diligent about conducting home office tours, making sure that you're connected, that you have backup devices, et cetera. And so that I feel is something that in this environment, when folks have been forced to adopt a remote model, has given us a bit of a competitive advantage.
Yeah, great. And I probably should take a little step back and ask you to talk about how you began to think about Crew Bloom when you co-founded it, right? What was an unmet need? What was the gap that you had identified?
Right.
Yeah.
Great question. So I think that if you spend a significant amount of time in the developing world, it becomes very, very apparent that it's just cheaper, right? A round trip Uber ride, I live in Brooklyn, to JFK is, I mean, if I take Uber Pool, I mean, it's $80. And for me to get to the airport in Manila round trip is $6 on my Grab app. And so what that presents, right, is an incredible opportunity for companies, in which case the oxygen of any business, right, that's in the for-profit space is revenue. Right. And so if I'm able to identify top caliber talent in markets where the cost of living is significantly greater, I mean, we're talking, it's an advantage that I don't think should be overlooked. But the flip side of that, right, is we've all called a bank, we've all called an airline and gotten connected to someone outside the US. And for lack of better terms, right, they just suck. They can't speak English. They can't navigate instinctually to deliver good results. And so it deteriorates our trust in the global workforce. And so what we set out to do is just find the absolute best and brightest, foster a remote work culture that ensures that folks like showing up to work, right? Because we believe people that have work-life balance, that aren't wasting an hour and a half commuting to get to their call center and then an hour and a half on their way home, that 3 hours could either be spent delivering results or spending time with my kids and throwing a ball around and helping with homework, right? The things that really matter on our human journey, because work's secondary.
Yeah, and that's what we're now realizing as a world, as a planet. You know, when this unfortunate global nightmare has really reminded us about all those qualities, those fundamental qualities that we've been neglecting a little bit, family and, you know, attention, as we're now reconnecting with them over video conferencing. Briana, I'd like to ask you how really Crew Bloom would work for those people who are interested. I'd like you to take some of the listeners of All Out Coach, those who are interested in a new progressive company that's all remote, you know, and providing a solution that is quality as well. How does the registration, you know, work? Once particular company in any industry decides that, look, they want to explore your model, what are some of the initial steps? And then I'll ask you some of the, you know, analytics and some of the ways of, you know, the culture, how that may be implied and how you measure culture as well. But let's start with just, what are some of the first steps that you take? Yeah.
So any organization that's in need of human capital, right? We're not filling highly technical roles, so we don't draft code and fill folks to work on product.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, so if we're in need of an executive assistant, we have QuickBooks specialists, we have support folks, we have sales folks, data, analytics, and once there's been a spark of interest, we will conduct a demo call. Onboarding is seamless. So one of the things that Crew Bloom has done, which really sets us apart from our competitors, is a free trial period. I am so confident in the caliber of talent that I have that you can try Crew Bloom out for 40 hours. If for whatever reason it's not a fit for you, you'll be refunded in full. And in addition, empowering our clients to interview folks is really essential, because as much as I can say my people speak better English than I do, unless we get on a video call and we can really have that human connection, trust is hard to build. So once interviews are conducted, we will have a launch call. You're given a dedicated account manager who will make sure that your tech stack aligns. One of the really important pieces of selling or working with folks in the domestic US or North America is location agnosticity. So we really want to promote your Crew Bloomer as just a remote extension of your in-office team, and ensure that they're equipped with email addresses and systems logins and licenses so that day one of training, they're ready to go. Ongoing, we have monthly performance calls as well as quarterly compensation calls, ensuring that expectations are not only being met but surpassed. And we are just exactly as mentioned, a remote extension of your in-office team, or nowadays just a remote extension of your remote team.
Yeah. How big is your company?
Yeah, so we have over 100 active contractors. The core of the business, my team that works directly under my co-founder and I, is around, give and take with dev, or around 25.
Around 25, right? Okay. And what are some of the industries that are your clients representing right now?
Yeah, so the verticals we've found success in are quite varied. So we look at fintech and marketing and ad tech and obviously SaaS. But I would say that insurance, real estate, financial services, and healthcare are our most profitable verticals.
I see. Okay. As you know, I work in the pharmaceutical industry, and we have our field commercial sales reps who have to often address questions from specialists, from physicians that are outside of the label, right? Outside of the indicated use for which that medication is approved by the government. And so they often have to forward those questions internally. to another department that is in medical or clinical development, research development, usually medical affairs, that usually most of the time outsources that that task to a third party. There are bigger companies that have their dedicated staff internally, but their responsibilities and roles entail recording and then just basically forwarding letters that are standard, that are developed by the company, that are referenced to help advise that physician on the data, right? So there is quite a lot of outsourcing that's being done now with the call centers, and a lot of the time they're not even in the United States. So I imagine that you haven't had any pharmaceutical clients yet, but these medical information centers, as they're known, uh, are trending towards more outsourced locations. So I think that that would be one industry and one particular application where I'd like you to comment where, how could Crew Bloom really differentiate itself in a different industry, in a highly regulated industry, such as the pharmaceutical industry? What are some ideas that you have that you could share with some of the listeners, as my network is mostly pharmaceutical industry, although not limited to it?
Of course.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, I just want to set expectation that Crew Bloom is not PCI compliant. So we're not able to navigate and absorb or be communicated sensitive payment information, which is really important. Aside from that, there's really, in my better judgment and experience, and I would think our client partners would say the same, benefit to going with an in-house call center versus Crew Bloom, right? So we understand that the call center industry has had mass impact on the developing world, and it's been monumental. They've transformed and impacted lives not only on the talent side, but on the enterprise side as well. But that being said, I've spent so much time in the developing world, and unfortunately what so often happens, and the reason why the industry by and large suffers from mediocre talent, is because the way they set out to obtain an account. So if I'm Citibank, we have an outsourcing department, and we are launching a new enterprise branch of one of our new credit cards, right? And so that being said, we're going to send out an RFP to the three biggest players in the space, the Converges and the Concentrics, right, with thousands and thousands and thousands of agents globally. And we're gonna see who can get this done at the best price. And so the bank or the airline, the organization, they're interested in one thing. Let's just get the call scores completed. Let's get the tasks done. And the call center is concerned of having a warm body to ensure that I need 500 reps or I'm not going to secure the new business. So they're forced to lower the caliber of talent that they have, right? You can get a job at a call center in India or the Philippines, so long as you can walk and talk and button a shirt, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so what happens is it just becomes factory meat farming on a human scale, right? There's no workplace culture in these environments, and they're not paid livable wages. Very transparently, call centers are cutting corners at the expense of their talent. And so I think that's one thing that we're really setting out to do differently. And that's really, really important. I know you have conversations surrounding culture and workplace vibes and energy on a regular basis, and it's really important to us in our model.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up that real world perspective because I think that's what's exciting about your company. And having attended that LinkedIn meeting, I can tell those who are listening to our podcast that your company, when you introduced it, gathered a lot of interest amongst not only myself, but among everyone in, at that meeting. because of the model that you have and because you address that cultural gap as well, and you help provide a different approach that's not just task oriented, but that's oriented towards an ongoing dialogue between you and your clients and between you and your crew bloomers, right? As you call them, right? And
We do.
yeah, the contractors that you connect your clients to. So can you tell us a little bit about more specifics of how do you screen your talent, and what are some techniques, what are some tips that you have?
Yeah, great question. So a number of companies, I would say the majority of massive players have company values and core values.
Mm-hmm.
And being an entrepreneur, you have a moral obligation to the folks that you're responsible for, right? Like I need to wake up every day and think of my team first. But finding common denominators between all of us is really important, right? Because the more we understand humans, the greater opportunity we have to lead them and mentor them in management roles. But also, like, we just want to work alongside people that have similar values to us, right? And we're able to accomplish greater things in that environment. And so Kate and myself, Kate is my co-founder, when we are confronted with challenging decisions, which is part of being an entrepreneur, we always go back to our core values, right? What is it that defines Crew Bloom? What is it that are our commonalities?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, when you care as much about your organization as I do, emotions come into play, but it's really important to boil this down to what makes crew bloomers tethered to one another.
Mm-hmm.
And so really interviewing and screening rigorously on the value side is important, and looking at soft skills, not only professional accomplishments, but
Mm-hmm.
asking things such as, what was the last podcast that you listened to? What content are you consuming? I personally, in my leadership, requires human connection. So having human huddles with individuals, I always, before a contractor is introduced to a prospective client, either my co-founder or myself takes 10 minutes. Speaking of nothing work related, right? Just tell me about you as a human. You have an entire Saturday to yourself. How are you going to spend that time?
Yeah.
I think it's really when we dig into the soft skills that we're able to find folks that are not only going to perform, but to stay with us for the long run and be aligned.
Yeah. Some of the strongest leaders that I look up to, that I admire and keep in touch with, I think have retained those that authenticity and those human connections and those meaningful relationships over time. So I think that you're onto a very, very important path that is timely, that is universal across cultures, across languages. So I really, really compliment your mission.
Just one thing to add, that when we look at the difference, right, between Uber and Amazon and Google and other smaller players, it's just very simple, right? Some organizations have more talent and more humans driving certain processes. And so in the call center space and outsourcing in particular, the human centricity has been overlooked. And I think that's a really, really risky move, and kind of coming back to the humans propelling the systems is something that we found to pay off in spades, and attrition is something we've been able to really overcome as a result.
I see. So that's one of your deliverables, or one of your very key advantages, I would say, right? The engagement, employee engagement, because you mentioned the lack of attrition in the outsourcing industry for the types of tasks for which you hire them. So do you have any data, or do you have any best or worst case scenarios, or any examples so far from since you started in terms of employee engagement that you could share?
Yeah, so as far as attrition, right, we have the same contractors we launched with, I guess almost 4 years ago, which is really exciting. So attrition, right, is an obsession of the leadership team at Crew Bloom. And I think that looking at satisfaction, not only on the client side and saying how satisfied are you with this partnership, but also drilling down into what we can do to become a better provider of work and stable income for our contractors is essential. If you like showing up to work every day, you're going to just produce better results. Happiness is one of our 7 core values. And I'm not going to say that there's not challenging days at Crew Bloom, but we hope the majority are far better than those that are not. And so that being said, just high vibrations across the board is essential. And we oversee and track and measure attrition very, very carefully. And it's something we're proud of.
Now, the language and the communication barriers, if any, are most of your clients English speaking? And how is communication a barrier at all? Or how do you overcome any communication language barriers, if any?
Great question. So Crew Bloomers speak Spanish as well as English. I am going to say that the world is a melting pot, and the United States in particular is a melting pot. And so you, for example, shared that you came from Georgia. Right. My ancestors came from Ireland and Italy. And I think that we as humans are becoming more open-minded and accepting to individuals that don't speak English as their first language. I know my co-founder, for example, when she was on a television station in Manila, and really sometimes struggles to speak Tagalog, which is the native language of the Philippines. My folks legitimately speak better English than me. Just like, it's very, very simple. Like, they just have cream of the crop communication skills, and it's essential, but not for every role. For our non-voice roles, and email and chat support, for example, or if we're looking at a non-voice data role, they still have exceptional communication skills, because of course that's step one of any work process.
Yeah. Speaking of analytics a little bit, I want to explore that topic a little bit in this question. I have an analytics company as well, pharmaceutical consulting company that's focused on analytics and organizational change, which means I'm trying to make that connection between the quantitative stimulus of our behavior and how it can relate into the qualitative and the engagement and just fulfillment employees. And I think that it is possible, similar to, let's say, frequent flyer programs, right? That we've all gotten used to. How do you explain or how do you quantify an abstract concept such as loyalty to your company, for example, or to an airline, right? You do it in this imperfect way that may put some customers at an advantage or disadvantage towards others, but nevertheless, it measures how often you fly, how far you fly into these numbers, right? Or points or miles, which ultimately stimulate you to fly more so that you can finally earn that free trip, right? Airline ticket. Analytics approaches that I've seen, a lot of them, unfortunately, I think they measure behaviors in the past rather than those in the future. Or they can tell you, for example, how much your coworker is spending on the computer, how long throughout the day, or how long, whether or not they're working, or how much they're working. But they really do not tell you about what drives them to work, or what really makes them fulfilled, or how could they work more in the future. So those are the two difficult concepts that I'm trying to really connect. How are you able to analyze your progress, the engagement over time? Are there particular outsourcing like tools that you use at Crew Bloom, or what are some factors that you rely on, if any, that you could share?
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the ways we evaluate our performance as being a provider of work is referral engagement, right? Because our best talent comes from referrals. And so that's a metric that we look at. Of course, client success and satisfaction surveys, contractor satisfaction surveys. We look at a number of different metrics. And I think that on the qualitative side, right, we really can drill very, very closely to some assumptions, but it's really hard to say that's something that we want to move forward with, right? Because feelings and emotions, and saying we think that Sonia has done a really good job this quarter, but can we back that up with metrics and statistics and data?
Mm-hmm.
And so looking at performance and a contractor very, very transparently on two fields, right? How culturally aligned are they? How engaged are they on a cultural side? And then also what's their output in terms of performance? So I think that's kind of our approach to understanding and driving the decisions we make.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, across the different industries, do you customize or do you centralize those performance metrics, or do you have universal metrics that you use, or across the different types of clients or industries?
It's different for every role. So there's three core KPIs and metrics that are set at the inception of our partnership, and it's varied greatly, right? So we look at activity metrics, we look at response times, we look at satisfaction surveys, and those metrics can evolve over time as all businesses do. But that's what's going to be revisited on the monthly performance huddle with your account manager. Top performers want to very clearly know what's expected of them. So it's really important that we outline what's expected and what's going to qualify as surpassing expectations for all crew bloomers, right? Because we don't want to just hit the expectations, we push further. I am pretty ruthless in terms of the performance piece. But right, we think that companies have that upper hand when people respect our mission and are on board and don't hate showing up to work every day. We can drive better performance.
Yeah. I know you mentioned you have sometimes happy hours, virtual happy hours, right? That you do, and which is now becoming very trending.
It is. So we do a number of things remotely to foster culture. Another thing that's really important that I must share is actually I'm supposed to be in Manila right now, but due to COVID was postponed. I don't think we can replicate face-to-face human interaction. I don't think that's replicable. I think humans need to come together to have shared experiences. We have a Crew Bloom Gives Back initiative, which empowers our folks to get out in the community and help serve those that are less fortunate than ourselves, which is essential. We make investments of, in September, we got an Airbnb. It was an all hands. We all got together and just sang karaoke for a weekend and had cooking competitions and gave back to an ethnic minority community. But when we're looking at the remote model, there are things that we can do that are going to greatly propel workplace culture, and things such as remote work happy hours. We have virtual bring your son or daughter to work day. So for a couple hours, your son or daughter can sit alongside you, and bringing and engaging family is always something that we value. And then little things, right? And right now we're doing gratitude circles. So we just shout out things that we're thankful for, and we try to build off of those. We do selfie competitions, and there's so many things that we can do. But I think that being tethered to individuals and having connections aside from what we're trying to accomplish with work is essential. You're going to just perform better and like showing up to work if you dig and know your coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for generously sharing those and not keeping those as secrets. Some of your Thank you. Yeah, I know at my company, where I work full time, Eurogen, they're starting to do some of that and starting to have happy hours, and even doing virtual cooking competitions. As in some of the conferences where we're going now are all virtual themselves. So our clients and our physicians are spending more time on Zoom and podcasts as well.
The best one my team loves First to Find. So we'll just first to find an empty toothpaste container, or first to find a Lipton tea bag. And it's so fun. And everyone's like scurrying around their homes. Like there's so many fun things that we can do and that we do at Crew Bloom that I really think adopting is something that pays off in spades.
Yeah. listening to you speak, I think I would make it a hypothesis that that has been some of your tactics, your uh, purely human, authentic approaches, coupled with your commitment and dedication, ruthless dedication, like you said, to performance and to quality, are the reason why you've had success and you've grown, and you haven't had much turnover in your company and among the contractors as well. So
Yeah.
that's the hypothesis I would make. So
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that you're sharing a lot of those. Now, I want to ask you about growth in the future. I know that you've been very successful as a company. What are some projects that are interesting that that you can share that you're involved in now, or what is your next year going to look like, or some of your goals for Crew Bloom?
Great question. So I think when Kate and I boil down our goals and kind of where we see Crew Bloom having the most impact, we need to focus and continue to focus on automation in the recruitment process. So
Mm-hmm.
how is it that we can qualified applicants? We reject, right now, we're looking at almost 99% of applicants, which is a challenging metric, but just the reality. And so that being said, if we're turning over 99 applicants and accepting one out of every 100, that's something that we need to focus on, continuing to build products. So we have a portal for our merchants and clients as well as contractors to log time off and general HR requests, payment automation, et cetera. So both my co-founder and I are non-technical, becoming technical. And so building product is essential. And then just looking at other markets for us to have an impact in. So we understand Mandarin is an exciting opportunity. When we look and drill into what it would take to identify top German or French speaking talent, that's something that really excites us in the future. But as for today and tomorrow, we're really excited to continue to penetrate new roles. We launched assistants and bookkeepers as well as social media managers, et cetera. And so that's really exciting. And just the more human lives we can positively impact, the better. And that's what we will continue to focus on moving forward.
Yeah. In terms of the geographical breakdown of the markets that you're in currently, you mentioned French speaking and others. What is that breakdown? I know you're a global company. You're based in Brooklyn in New York, right? So, what is the proportion of the United States workforce or clientele that you have compared to the rest of the world?
So it's about 85% of our accounts are in the U.S. We have we have an account in the UAE and Dubai, a number in Canada and Australia. On the talent side of the business, 85% of our talent resources are coming directly from the Philippines. I would say 5% are coming from India, in particular on the non-voice accounts, and then another 10% is coming from the Dominican Republic and Mexico. Peru is an exciting market for us, as well as Colombia, a little bit more litigious in terms of just doing business there, and we need to play by the rules. But the majority of our business is done in the US and the Philippines.
And there are different artificial intelligence solutions that may be advantageous or may be competitive. And to what extent are you utilizing those types of the technology right now, and where do you want to be in the future in terms of technology?
Great question. So automation is something that we have monthly huddles surrounding automation and what's going on in the environment, and how can we ensure that, because you don't build a company to withstand a number of years, rather decades. And so that being said, we have to be aware of what's going on and how automation will change our processes. And although automation will have a mass disruption, more so and more so and more so, humans will still propel some processes. And so we believe that the future of the global workforce is brighter than the domestic. And that as we look at what's most easily replicable there will still be support coming from human beings propelling processes. But automation is something we're super excited about. Again, we want to better lives and propel businesses to grow. And automation is undoubtedly, I think, a better tool and something to dig into versus our competitive call center.
Okay, great. Briana, I'd like to ask you to tell those who are going to listen to our podcast discussion here about where they can find CrewBloom. How can they learn more about it?
Of course. So CrewBloom, just like J Crew and bloom like the flower. So CREWBLOOM.com. Our handle on LinkedIn is CrewBloom, as well as Instagram and Facebook. My email is Briana, BRIANNA, at crewbloom.com. So don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to connect with you, share any more insights that I have, and as well as learn from you and what your experience has been. And yeah, we just look forward to keeping in close touch. Of course, Tim, we're connected as well, but endless gratitude for the time today.
Sure, thank you. Yes, and I know you're active on LinkedIn among the different social media formats. Or are there any events or any upcoming interviews or other podcasts or anywhere where we can also see or learn more about CrewBloom?
Yeah, so I'm quite active in We Mentors, which is a program and it's an initiative from the city of New York to narrow the gender gap of capital distribution. So I speak on a number of panels for them. The next panel I'm on is on the 15th of April. Potentially, we've already missed that. But in May, I'll also be joining another panel discussion. I work really closely with the women entrepreneur community in New York, which is quite vibrant. But I'm also speaking at a conference upcoming, and will be in touch and sharing on social all opportunities that I am sharing my journey.
Great. Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question because I know that a lot of people will be interested in following you there as well. What has been your greatest accomplishment personally?
Oh, great question. So something I'm really proud of, I coach Special Olympics, and my athletes had a great season. I just took them to state games up in Rochester. Special Olympics is definitely an organization I hold very close to my heart, but I also run marathons. So I hope to complete a marathon on all 7 continents next March. I run Antarctica. Just a few, I guess, in January.
Yeah. You have run it before?
Pardon?
You have run it before in Antarctica marathon?
Not before. This is the first time.
Oh, this is going to be your first time. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. But in January, I ran 2 marathons on 2 continents in 2 days, which was a pretty big challenge for myself, and I'm pretty proud with the outcome. So
yes, congratulations. Yeah, absolutely. So I think you really take the slogan that I have chosen for All Out Coach: stretch yourself, lift others, really to the next level, because just by those examples alone. Speaking of All Out Coach, what about All Out Coach really resonates with you and with your mission?
Yeah, so I think that, and I know your reputation at the event was notable. In addition, right, just looking at your impressive and expansive catalog of professional experience is something that can benefit so many humans. And I really enjoy it, in particular, just the humanness of your podcast. I've had a chance to share on a number of different podcasts, and I just think that in particular, as an entrepreneur and as a professional, we put a lot into that, right? And at times we're expected to be robotic and to not be emotional about that journey. But I really respect and appreciate your insistence on keeping that at the forefront.
Thank you. Thank you. As I've learned a lot more about CrewBloom, with the times that I've spoken to you and actually throughout this discussion now, that means a lot. So I appreciate your compliment, and thank you again for your time, Briana. All the best. And thank you.
My pleasure. Endless gratitude. Be good to yourself, and I look forward to being in touch.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Bye, Tim.
Bye.